let's talk Ted Williams and Joe DiMaggio. And while we're at it, we can show some baseball cards. These two players were friends. I think they made each other better on the field. They also took a little bit away from each other in terms of awards, World Series wins, but after everything was said and done, I do think, as previously mentioned, they made each other better. They made their teams better. And in some ways, they were polar opposites. DiMaggio got along with the media somewhat. Ted Williams, not so much. Both players, all-time greats. I think in today, their accomplishments are a little fading, but nevertheless should not take anything away from everything they achieved, not only for themselves, but also their teams and Major League Baseball. So, with Ruth and Garrett, Mantle and Mays, Ollie Frazier, Woods and Nicholas, Chamberlain and Russell, we definitely have DiMaggio and Williams. It's hard to speak about one and not mention the other. Here we're showing Perez Steele Hall of Fame postcards, both signed. This one's graded, this one's not, but that's fine. You can see the back of them, quite similar. The Ted Williams from 1981 and the Joe DiMaggio's from 1980. Wonderful items, and they're still fairly inexpensive if you want to pick up autographs of these two elite players. Here we have one of Joe DiMaggio's earliest cards. This is the 1936 National Chickle. I would consider it a photograph, but it's also a card, considered by some, but here there's no back to it. Only about 260 of these graded. If you don't want this and you want to get a true DiMaggio rookie card, there's usually 3 of them. You have this one, as we discussed. You have the 1936 Worldwide Gum, quite expensive, and we have the 1937 OPG, which is a stand-up die-cut type of a card, similar to the 1964 Top stand-ups. Here we have the 1939 Play Ball, a little bit under 2,500 total graded. Not too hard to obtain, but can go for a fairly decent amount if you want a well-registered copy. Here's the back of it. These were made by Gum Inc., which ultimately turned into Bowman later that decade. Here we have the 1939 Play Ball Ted Williams. A little bit under 1,900 total graded. Nice cards for their eras. We're going to step back a year and go to 1938. When I talked about Joe DiMaggio rookie cards, this was one that some people call it a rookie. I would say probably not. I would go with one of the Canadian issues or the National Chickle, but it's still an early card, quite hard to get. 2 cards in this set with Joe's picture. One has cartoons, and you have this one which doesn't. This is number 240, and the ones with the cartoons going around it before the border ends is number 274. Similar amount graded 416 total graded for this one, and 488 graded for number 274. It's a nice card. The backs are a combination in design of the 1933 and 34 goudey. Interestingly, that goudey continued the numbering of this set where 1933 left off, not the 1934 set. Now we're going to go into 1940. The 1940 play ball cards are about 40% more scarce than the 1939 issue. A lot of the 1940 play ball pictures were also used in the 1941 set. So here we have Joe and Ted. You see the 1940 card has a 1939 pennant. There's the back of each. Quite similar to the 1939 issue. There's comparison, the Ted Williams cards. With the 1941 play ball set, I only have one card. I have the Ted Williams. You can see almost 1,950 graded, so a little bit more than other play ball years. This is an extremely popular card. In my own opinion, I prefer the 1940 over the 41. You can see they just took the picture and they added some color to it, mainly pastels. And the backs are nearly identical. The 41 cards are very popular because of the achievements that both players had. The Yankees won the World Series in 41, but more importantly, we have the last season any hitter hit above 400. Ted Williams hit 406 in 41, and we got the 56-game consecutive hitting streak by Joe DiMaggio. And DiMaggio in 1941 won his second MVP. Ted Williams came in second. Now we're going to jump up to 1948. Here we have the swell card. This is a photograph from the All-Star game the year before, where Ted Williams hit a home run in the 9th inning to win the game. Here we have the 1949 Leaf Joe DiMaggio. A little bit over 2,100, almost 2,200 total graded. Not a rare card by any means. However, if you're looking for registration and nice color and centering, yeah, then the cards get quite rare. Here we have the Ted Williams card, side by side with the Joe D. Almost the same amount graded. Now, it's important to note, if you are a collector of Leaf cards, in 1949, there were two industry accepted versions or types. You have type 1 and type 2. The type 1 card shows detail in the caps and part of the jerseys, whereas Leaf thought that their cards weren't popping enough, so they started introducing more color during the printing process, which unfortunately removed a lot of the detail. If you take a look, I think this is most apparent on the 1949 Leaf Jackie Robinson cards. And you can clearly see the difference in Jackie's cap, where the darker colored blue cap has a lot of black detail in it, whereas the harder version to obtain, the Type 2, which has a bright Dodger blue cap and no detail with it. Here's the backs of each card. There's rumors that Joe DiMaggio didn't give Leaf permission to print his card. Didn't stop Leaf and an upcoming company whose card we didn't get to yet from using his image. Here we have the 1950 Bowman Ted Williams, almost 2,600 total graded. Joe DiMaggio did not have a 1950 card. Here's the 1951 Ted Williams for comparison. Bowman did increase the print run, and you see 4,600 graded for 1951 versus almost 2,600 for 1950. Same image used, slightly different cropping, and obviously the card is bigger in 1951. Bowman still has, a lot of text in the back. Little mentions of stats, but doesn't show stats as we would get in 1952 with the top set. DiMaggio also had a 1951 card issued by Burke Ross. A little bit over 400 of these graded. These were issued with side by side, so Joe had a player next to him, and then you would just tear it apart. You see the little perforations here. Here's the back. I don't have a 1952 Joe DiMaggio Burke Ross, but I have a Ted Williams. You can see the difference in size between both years of Burke Ross. So we have 427 total graded for the Joe DiMaggio in 51, and a total of 363 graded for Ted Williams in 1952. Registration problems with both sets. I like this card. I like how the card pops, despite the dull use of colors, but the photography was excellent. Apparently Burke Ross did a lot of the pictures that were used in Bowman and Top sets. Here's the back of both cards. Here's a big guy. I'm going to have to zoom out a little bit for this one. Here we got the 1952 Redman Tobacco Ted Williams. So in 1952, an adult would purchase chewing tobacco in a square package, and they had a type of cellophane material on the outside that was wrapped around the tobacco package, and this was affixed to the back of it. So you saw which player you were going to get when choosing your chewing tobacco. 280 graded. This is a hard one to figure out what the population report is, because SGC, PSA, and BGS, they don't always tell you if it includes the bottom tag or coupon. So I just picked 280 as the total pop, but it varies. I do like the use of green that Redman Tobacco did use for the card. The green in back of Ted reminds me of the infamous Fenway Park Red Monster. And the back of the card here, you can see if you cut along the coupon and mailed it in, you would get a baseball cap. Here we come to 1954. Ted Williams had cards all the way up to 1951 with Bowman. He had a contract with them. Topps came around. Rumor has it that Sy Berger really wanted Ted Williams in the 1952 and 53 sets, despite serving in the military. But he was under contract with Bowman. So when that contract ended, Sy Berger from Topps signed Ted Williams to an exclusive contract. Bowman didn't find out until the cards were already printed. So the 1954 Bowman got out. Bowman had to stop the presses, so to speak, issue another card in its place, Jimmy Purcell. So we have the 54 Bowman, almost 2,000 total graded, and 1954 Topps. We have almost 8,100 of number 1 made, graded. Number 250 in the top set is also Ted Williams, different pose, and with a yellow background. I refer to this as the orange Ted, and number 250 as the lemon Ted, or the yellow Ted. Some people have their favorites. I prefer the 1954 Bowman, but I do understand the popularity of the 1954 Topps issue, especially card number 1. Here's the backs of it. They used a horizontal instead of vertical back. Get this closer. Got a little bit of glare from the camera light. Now, in my opinion, the 1954 Topps back just blows away the Bowman one. Zoom out a little bit. See them side by side. I love the use of green on the 54s. Next card up, 1955 Topps. I have had this card in my collection since high school, when I picked it up along with the 55 Hank Aaron, second year Hank. Here we have, I want to put these this way for now. Here we have the 1956 Topps Ted Williams. This is the gray back. So in 1955, there's a total of almost 9,400 graded. In 1956, there's over almost 11,000 total graded. In 56, we have almost 3,400 of the graybacks graded, and almost 6,800 of the whitebacks graded. I'll turn around the 56, and you can see here that this has a gray back to it, and on the other cards The white backs, you can clearly tell that a different cardstock was used. It's a tongue twister to talk about which series produce which backs and which backs are more scarce because they flip-flop. I'll put a link in the video, or I'll put an image that talks about which backs are more scarce in which series. 56, 55, and 56 Ted Williams. Here we have the 1957 Topps Ted Williams number 1. Almost 9,200 total graded. This would be Ted Williams' last year being an exclusive player to Topps. The original contract was signed in December 28th, 1953, where Topps signed Ted to an exclusive contract. And it lasted until the end of the 1957 season. I like this Ted. It's hard to find one with centering and registration. Usually you have to choose between one or the other. The 57s also have a lot of registration issues with snow, where the card looks like it appears you're looking through a screen window or screen door. But the snow is a lot of problem on this card. Little white dots, specks. Here's the back of it. So it's the end of 1957. Sy Berger wants to sign Ted to another contract. Ted's unsure. He wants a lot of money. So Sy contacts Ted. Ted gets his agent involved, Fred Cochran, and they come up with a new contract. It's a one-year deal for 1958. Here's the letter from Topps Chewing Gum. This letter's dated October 1st, 1957. It's addressed to Fred's agent, to Ted's agent, Fred Cochran. If you have a chance, Google Fred Cochran. He represented a lot of players in golf and baseball. He's extremely well known in the golf world. Set up a lot of charitable golf events with players such as Babe Ruth, Ty Cobb, Ted Williams. He also knew a lot of celebrities. Fred was extremely close with Ted and Stan Musial. So this letter just basically states Sy Berger's signature here. And Sy is just confirming with Ted through Fred what the agreement was. So just acknowledge the receipt of the letter indicating your agreement to the extension for 1958 of the original agreement of December 28, 1953 with Ted Williams. Then he thanks him, appreciation, kindness. And here you see Sy's signature. Sy Berger just signed Sy. And on the back of this letter, I just have a little bit of information basically saying that Fred Cochran's daughter, Marguerite, acknowledges that these are letters from her dad's collection. And a special thank you to Keith. I'll have a link to his YouTube channel for selling me this, along with this letter. This letter is dated 1975, signed by Ted Williams. And the reason I bought it is not so much for the Ted Williams signature. That's nice too. But the letter talks about how Fred is unable to attend an event for his friend, Fred Cochran. Knowing Ted, he was probably busy fishing. So what do we have in 1958? Topps got their money's worth, I'll tell you that much. They put Ted Williams on 2 cards. Nope. 3 cards. Nope. 4 cards. Let's take a look at each card one by one. Here's number 1. This is of the 1958 Topps Ted Williams. The All-Star card. Dual Players card, Slugger Supreme. And the 1958 Topps Boston Red Sox team card. Look close enough, you can see Ted. Some other items from the collection I'd like to share. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Here we have the July 8th, 1968 Sports Illustrated issue, which contains an article from Ted Williams about the science of hitting. It's a great cover. These could be picked up still relatively inexpensive on eBay. Due to the popularity of hitting and Ted's philosophy, spawned a book, The Science of Hitting, by Ted Williams and John Underwood. A lot of players still use Ted Williams' philosophy about hip rotation, swinging the bat on a slight uppercut to meet the ball coming down on us from the mound, and the bat should meet it. The book was so popular that it got a second print. Also in my collection, I have a Joe DiMaggio autograph photo. Also have 2 8x10s that mean a lot to me. This 8x10 was obtained in person at the January 1989 500 Home Run Living Member Show. It was in Atlantic City, Trop World, if I remember correctly. My father waited in line. It was a long line. Ted was seated next to Joe DiMaggio, and my father called the tail end of the conversation about the hardest thing to do in sports. And Ted fished, they golfed. Ted said the hardest thing in sports is to hit a 95-mile-per-hour fastball. And Joe D agreed. Here we have something I recently picked up. A Joe DiMaggio signed 8x10 when he was with the Oakland A's as a spring training coach. It's unusual to see Joe not wearing Yankee pinstripes or suit, as he was well known for wearing. He's wearing an Oakland A's, an old school Oakland A's. Charlie Finley's uniform. Charlie loved his Oakland A's green. Here's the autograph thank you for spending your time watching this video. At the end of it, I will have some images about where each of the players finished their careers in terms of some stats, such as home runs. When DiMaggio retired, he was 4th on the list with 361 home runs. When Ted retired, he was 3rd all-time with his 521 home runs, which pushed Joe DiMaggio down to 11th all-time. That's pretty impressive. Joe D finished 4th in all-time home runs when he retired, and Ted finished 3rd. In slugging, DiMaggio finished 7th when he retired, and at that time, Ted Williams was 2nd all-time in slugging, and when he retired, he was still 2nd in all-time slugging. RBIs, Joe DiMaggio retired number 14, 14th most RBIs, and Ted Williams retired as the 8th most RBIs in all-time history, which, when you take into account a lot of these stats, both of these players lost significant amount of time due to military service. Ted lost about 5 years due to World War II and the Korean War, and Joe DiMaggio lost, I believe, 3 seasons due to wartime service. Both players, different types of wartime service. Ted Williams is usually more recognized because he was a pilot. A lot of stories about Ted Williams' military service. I would highly recommend you research it. The last stat I like to talk about, which dumbfounded me, was intentional walks. When Joe DiMaggio retired, he was 9th in all-time intentional walks, despite the massive amount of military service served, seasons lost. And when he retired, Ted Williams was still 1st. So not only was Ted 1st in all-time intentional walks at the end of the 1951 season, with all the time lost from World War II. And when Ted Williams retired at the end of the 1959 season, he was 2nd all-time in intentional walks, just behind Stan Musial, and Joe DiMaggio fell from 9th to 12th. Well, appreciate everyone watching. Thank you. Please like and subscribe this video if you can. And as John Keating always says, this video is sponsored by no one.